a place where sin cannot molest, near to the heart of God. O Jesus, blessed Redeemer, sent from the heart of God, hold us who wait before thee, near to the heart of God.
Good morning. My name is Jasmene Rhem. This is my husband, Thomas Rhem. We are outdoor education. That's our ministry. And we're going to talk today about some wild edible plants that are out this time of year. We're in the fall of the year or near the fall of the year, where a lot of plants are, beginning to die, but there's still plenty of food. So we're going to be walking around the property and identifying some of the wild edibles that are out here. In the fall of the year, you're not going to find as many flowers and things that you would find in the spring and summer. However, there are still berries, there are still some leaves and some flowers, and there's roots that we can also eat. So in a few moments, we're going to take you around and just show you what we have out here. Well, we have found some horse apple. This is available this time of year. Normally, it's in the tree, but you'll begin to see them falling out on the ground. And they'll start falling, and there'll be several dozens all over the ground. And that's usually when they're ripe. But this here, many people look at it and think that, they play with it and throw it at each other, but this is edible. In fact, for about 3 years, I kept telling my husband that I believe it was edible, and I did a little research. And finally, we figured out how to cook it. And what we did was chopped it up, like he's going to chop it. Not in my hand. I'm going to chop it once more. Okay. Yes. If you look on the inside, you see the little seeds. What we did was chopped it up about 4 times, and then we boiled it in some salted water for about 30 minutes. And what did it taste like?
Butternut squash.
It kind of had a squash taste to it. It's a little sticky. When you look at this, you feel the milk, but once you start boiling it with the salted water, all of that goes away. So this is called horse apple. Another name for it is
Osage Orange.
Osage Orange. That's the name most people know it by, Osage Orange. It's used mainly, the bark of the tree and so forth, is mainly used for as a border for fences, a fence border. But this fruit, which is about September, is when it's ripe. It's excellent to chop up, boil in salted water for about 30 minutes, and then eat it like squash.
Native Americans used to take the young bark and make bows out of them. They make excellent bows, and they're strong. Trying to cut it with a commercial chainsaw, you wear out many blades.
So that's one of our first little wild edibles we found for today. We have another one. This is awesome. You see how sticky that is? We have another one that we found. This is called Goldenrod. And as you see, the flowers, this is just beginning to bud, but it gets a nice yellow golden color. If you take the leaves and crush them and smell them, they have like an anise type flavor to them, anise, A-N-I-S-E. And they were used years ago when people would make cookies, candy, cakes, pies. This is what they use to flavor it. So the whole plant can be used. The flowers can be used in salads. The leaves can be used to flavor your cookies and candies. And this is available usually starting right about early September all the way into October. And this is one that's just beginning to turn yellow, and when it fully opens, it'll begin to look like this one that has the yellow leaves. You can see them really clearly. This is called Goldenrod. Another one that we found, and this is another fall one, an early fall. This is called ironweed. You see the pretty purple flowers? Ironweed was actually used to help women who were low in iron. So this is a natural thing. You can use the leaves and eat it in the place of if you have anemia or something like that. This is called ironweed. Well, I'm not going to try and hold that, but this is thistle. Now, obviously, in this stage, you can't do much with it. Most wild edible plants, the best time to eat them is before they go into their flowering stage because they're usually a bit more tender. So this one here, what you would have done is waited or got it before the flowers came out, as pretty as they are. And all you do is take a knife. You want to demonstrate how you would scrape off the thistles? Yes, you do. And my husband's going to demonstrate. Or shall I do it? There we go. You're just scraping off the thistles. And what you're trying to get at is the stem. If you get it before it flowers, what you'll have is a celery tasting plant. It actually, to me, it tastes better than celery. It has a nice, sweet, celery type taste. And you just chop it up just like you would celery. As you see, he's cleared it off. It almost looks like a stalk of celery. And just use it the same way you would use celery. But you want to make sure that you get it early in the season before the flower, because when it gets at this stage, there you go. When it gets to this stage, it's a little bit tougher, a little drier. So you want to try and get it before it gets, the flowers come on it. How does it taste? Does it still have a little bit of the sweetness in it?
Very little. It's kind of dry.
Yeah, it's going to be kind of dry when it flowers like this.
However, the inner piece, pretty good.
And this is called a thistle. There's many, many kinds of thistles. There's bull thistle, there's Canadian thistle, but all of them are edible. Is it a little better once you get in inside? So see, it's a little bit tender, but if we had gotten it and harvested it before it flowered, it'd be much better, much sweeter, much more tender. Here we found clover. Now there's many different types of clover. There's the red clover, white clover, yellow clover, sweet clover, crimson clover. All clovers are edible. This is the white clover, and this is the one that pretty much stays all year round. The flower, we'll just pull that up, and the leaf are usually a little smaller than most of the clovers. I think we'll get, here we go. It's not a good one. Here's one. One of the ways you can tell a clover is because of the little white or silver chevron on the leaves. Very, very faint on some of them, but most clovers will have that. And as you see, this clover, the white clover, this is one of the first clovers to come up in the spring, and it pretty much lasts throughout the summer. Now later on in the fall, if we're getting into the fall, you won't see the flowers, but you will still see the leaves. The leaves are edible. You can use them in salads. You can cook with them, put them in your soup. You can eat the stems. You can eat every part of the wild clover. And they're very, very nutritional. So this is our clover. And just need to look for it in your grass. Even if you cut it, you can still look. It grows pretty low, so you don't have to worry about ever getting rid of it, because as you see, it grows so low to the ground, unless you cut it really, really close, you're still going to have clover leaves. So clover leaves are edible and highly nutritional.
Here we have grass. I'd like to interject this. 2 Kings, the 19th chapter, verse, I believe, 26. It tells, or 29, it tells us about King Hezekiah, king of Israel, how they were surrounded by Sennacherib and enemy soldiers, and the Lord, and they had just prayed to the Lord. He told them not to worry about them. He would handle, he would take care of it. And he gave them extra information. He says, for 3 years, whatever comes up, you eat. On the 3rd year, you plant, and you'll be all right. Now, the word says a new thing happens. As time went on, we read about King Nebuchadnezzar, who he got caught up in himself, and for 7 years, he ate grass, just like the cows and the animals of the field, all kind of grass. All grass is edible. Doesn't matter. The seed, the leaves, the stem is all edible. It will sustain you. You can make soup out of the seeds, and if the leaves are very tender, you can eat it as is. If it's a little rough, you can always cook it. You can bake it. You can fry it. There's a lot you can do with grass. And for your information, from the stem up, some people would say that only the white part is edible. However, from the white part to the green part is edible.
All right, we found another one here. This grows low in the grass. This is horse nettle. It's in the nettle family, and if you look at the stem and under the leaves, there's a lot of little thorns on it that do stick and sting. It's not ready yet. What part grows? It grows a yellow berry, but before the berry, there's a kind of lilac-colored flower which will develop, and after the flower dies, then the berry comes, and when it's orange, a good orange-yellow color, you can cook it, and it's actually edible. So this is called horse nettle, and it does have little hairs like stinging nettle, but this is the horse nettle. Here we are. We found some passion fruit. This is actually one of my favorite wild edibles. Even though we don't see the flower right now, if you look carefully at the leaves, you can identify it by looking at the shape of the leaves. It has 3 lobes. Every single leaf is like that. Now hopefully we'll find one that has the flower on it, but this passion flower or passion fruit is actually the passion fruit juice that we drink in any store. It's delicious, and the flower has a beautiful purple lilac color to it. So we're going to look for the flower. Hopefully we can find a flower a little later on. But if you look at the leaves, this is the leaf of the passion flower, and they're very distinguishable. And we have another one. This one is, I guess I would say, my second favorite. This is what most people know it as sour grass. And if you look at the leaves very closely, because some people mistake it for clover, it does look similar to clover, but if you study the leaves, they have a very distinguishing heart shape to them. And they don't have the little chevron that the clover has. You see that heart shape on the leaf? And then it has a little yellow flower, which clovers don't have flowers like this. You see that yellow flower? That's one of the ways you can tell the sour grass from the clover. Now, sour grass has a delicious lemony taste to it, and you can take the leaves and chew them at the back of your mouth. Oh, they're delicious and very high in vitamin C. You can eat the whole plant, you can eat the flowers, the leaves, and even the little seed pods that develop after the flower dies. It's so high in vitamin C, it's used to treat scurvy and any problem with low vitamin C. If you need to get vitamin C in your diet, this is the plant you want to start eating. Now, the common name is sour grass. Most people know it by that. But another common name is wood sorrel. So it's called wood sorrel. We didn't mention it before, but most of our wild plants, they have several common names, and it depends what part of the country you're in. So most people have called this the sour grass, but another name is common wood sorrel. All right, we're along the tree line now, and if you'll notice, different plants grow in different places. What we saw earlier, we found about 3 different plants, but they were all growing in the sunlight. Now we're along the tree line, edges of the woods, and we see some more goldenrod growing, and this one is just at the stage where it's about to get really golden colored. And this is a good stage to get it because it's still kind of mild in taste. And you look at the leaves, these are the leaves that have that wonderful anise type flavor to them. The one that we talked about earlier, using in cookies, candy, cakes, and so forth. And we're going to move on down. We see these leaves up here. Here we have wild grapes just growing up in the trees, and a vine that's taking over. And as we go up higher, we see them a little bit more to the left. We'll see the actual grapes. And my husband's going to cut down a few. These are actually not going to be as sweet as the grapes that you see, you know, in the store. Let's see if we can find better ones. Those up there, they can see them a lot better. Here's a little bit here. They're not sweet. They're not really bitter. They're probably much, they're actually kind of good. If you kind of like that bitter sweet taste, they're not bad, but usually these are even better after a good freeze. So you look up here and you see a whole bunch of them. All you need to do is take these and add a little sweetener to it, and you'll have a nice delicious grape jam or grape jelly. So this is a nice little bunch here. My husband's going to chop it down. They actually taste pretty good, even during this early part of the season. See, we got a whole bunch of them here. You want to taste one? They're not bad at all. I thought they would be they're nice and juicy. And usually have 1 or 2 seeds in them. But they're nice and red. It tastes pretty good. Not bad at all. All you need to do is add some sweetener and you make a delicious jam or jelly. So this is our wild grapes. Now, a lot of times you'll find muscadine growing wild too. We just haven't seen those yet. We're still along the edges of the woods, and we found this very, very large hickory tree. If you look between the leaves there, you see the little hickory there. Hickories are delicious nuts, and they're good this time of year on into the fall and the winter. They'll start falling off the tree in just probably in a few months or so, maybe toward the end of October. But these are some delicious nuts. To me, they have a taste somewhat like pecans with sugar in it. And this is hickory. There's many different types of hickory. There's a shagbark hickory, which has larger nuts. But all the hickory nuts are delicious, edible, and nutritious. So you want to make sure if you have hickory on your land or you know where you can get them, don't let the nuts go to waste. Eat them, use them. They're a little bit hard to get to, but once you get to them, they're delicious. Still on the edges of the woods. And you see we have a favorite tree. This is our sassafras tree. Now, one of the ways you can tell a sassafras tree, as my husband digs for the root, is the 3 different leaves that are on the tree. We have one leaf that has 3 lobes. Then we have the other leaf that looks like a mitten. And then we have a leaf that has no lobes whatsoever. So we have 3 different types of leaves on the sassafras tree. And this is one of the few trees that has 3 different types of leaves on them. Now, all parts of the sassafras tree are edible. If you've heard of gumbo from Louisiana, gumbo, they would use the leaves of the sassafras tree, and generally earlier in the spring, and crush them up. This is what makes the gumbo taste so good. Then, as you see my husband digging here, the root is this tree is the original root beer. Root beer was made from the root of this tree, and when you smell it, you can actually taste or smell that taste of root beer. Now, the root beer they make nowadays, unfortunately, it doesn't have, sassafras in it, but you can still make your own root beer if you have sassafras trees on your land. And my husband is very determined to get this root out of the ground because it is worth it. It's very good for you, and it helps. Sassafras trees help to calm your stomach. If you ever have An upset stomach is a good thing to drink some sassafras tea. It has a very, very strong smell. Once you smell it, you'll never forget it. So I'm going to let him see if he can get that root out of there. How far down does it normally go, dear?
About 3 to 4 inches.
Yeah, so
What's happening is you have a lot of rock in this particular soil. So
all right.
we'll have to do like some of the native animals. I didn't bring my shovel.
But if you get a small part of it, that'll be worth it.
Okay.
Now, when you use the root of the sassafras, you actually would boil the root until the water is a nice rusty color. And remember, you don't have to throw it away after that first boil. You can actually boil it until the water stops turning a good rusty color, and you'll have a very, very delicious beverage. And it's good to use this, especially in the fall of the year. And that's the good part of it. You can use it all year long, but the fall is a good time to dig it as well. Looks like we're almost there.
I need you to back up some.
Okay, we're going to get out the way. He may have to kind of drag it out of there. Looks like it's trying. There it goes. It's coming up. Whoa. There it is. There we go. Now let's see. Let's get a good smell of this. Ah, yes. That's the delicious smell of the sassafras tree. And from here on down, this root is what you would boil. And once you put it in the water will turn rusty color. And I've used it sometimes up to 4 or 5 times, just using the same root. And once the water stops getting that nice rusty color, then it's time to get rid of it, to throw it away. But this is a sassafras tree, and one of our delicious beverages, this is the original root beer because it was made from the root of the tree. All right, we had another thing we wanted to mention about the sassafras root, which I kind of found out about recently. If you take this root and chop it up into little pieces, you don't even have to use the whole root, just maybe about that much. If you have a problem with fruit flies, just take pieces of the root and put it around your fruit. They will not come and bother it. So this is a fruit fly deterrent. And besides that, it'll leave your kitchen smelling really nice and fresh if you like root beer. Oh, it smells so good.
Now you can take the outer bark of the root beer or the sassafras tree, and it has another flavor or another smell altogether. It smells more like the leaves, which is an orangey type smell. And smell that.
It has a different smell. Yeah, the stronger smell is in the root, but yeah, it has a different smell.
The closer you get to the root, or the bottom part, the more it'll smell like the root beer that we're used to. But it has to come down.
Yeah, you have to get close to the bottom. But the root, what's in the ground, is what's going to really have that root beer taste to it and smell. Still on the edge of the woods, we found some perilla here. And another name for this perilla is rattlesnake weed. The reason is, you see the flowers here, these little tiny flowers, and if you look up close, they kind of have a light lilac colored, purple color to them. Well, after these flowers die, this pod or all these little flowers here are going to be very dry, and if you brush up against them, they actually sound like a rattlesnake rattling. So that's one of the reasons. The other name for this is rattlesnake weed. But the perilla, this is an edible plant. It's in the mint family, and all mints have a square stem. So this one has a square stem. It is in the mint family. It's hard to see it. This plant here is used by the Asians in many of their stir fries. It's called, the name they use it, call it under is shishu. It's spelled S-H-I-S-O. If you go to an Asian market and ask them for shishu, this is the plant that they'll use. They take the leaves of this plant, and it actually has a strong minty taste. It's kind of have a purplish color. Sometimes it's much stronger than this on the bottom. But this plant can be used in stir fries. You can actually eat it fresh if you like the taste. And my husband and I, when we were rangers, we actually used it as an insect repellent because it is a mint. And all you do for that is crush it up. And sometimes when we would forget to get insect repellent, we would just stick it in our sleeves or in our socks, and it would keep insects away. So shishu is edible. It's good as an insect repellent. The actual name that most people know it is perilla, and it's good and excellent tasting in stir fries. We'll step over here a little bit to this tree here. If you look, oops, well, here's the leaves. You can see how they are compound leaves. This is one of the many sumacs. There are sumacs. This is the smooth sumac. The berries right here in this tree, if I can get to them, are edible. This here, you just take the berries around this time of year. These are not ripe until September, October, and these are very ripe. You see, if you can look at it a little closer, you see the little shine on the berries. The important thing about sumac is to get them before it rains too much, because if it rains too much, it'll wash off all that acid that's actually tastes delicious, makes it have that wonderful lemony taste. Yeah, they're pretty good. Now, another name for sumac is wild lemonade or Indian lemonade. And you can actually make a lemonade beverage out of this. All you do, there's two different ways to do it. One, you boil some water and then pour it over the berries and let it steep for about 30 minutes. And some people prefer to do it with just cold water. They just take these berries and stick it in cold water for about 20-30 minutes. I prefer the hot boiling water because it tends to bring out more of the strength and taste of the wild lemonade. Now there is what they call a winged sumac. You want to hold that? The winged sumac kind of has little wings in between the stems of the plant. As you look carefully at this one, it's just totally smooth. It has a smooth stem. This is the smooth sumac. Now we're going to walk a little bit over to another one of my favorite, I guess I have several favorites, favorite trees. Now even though this is not quite at the stage that you want to eat it, if you have these on your property, and we can look at the seed pods, these hundreds of little brown seed pods, those were once flowers. And in the early spring, if you have one of these trees on your property, watch for it in the early spring. I would say around April. What happens is before the leaves even come out, you're going to have thousands upon thousands of little pink flowers, and that's when you want to eat it. You want to eat those pink flowers when they open up. You can eat them raw, put them in salads, just eat them right off the tree. They're considered a good trail nibble, and they're very sweet, not like a honey sweet, and delicious. This is called the redbud tree, and you see how the leaves are shaped like kind of like a heart shape. But if you have one, watch it, keep following it, and wait till the spring of the year. In April, the pretty pinkish flowers will be, and that's when you want to take it and eat it. And the flowers will come on before the leaves. This is the redbud. A little further over here, we have another hickory. Now this one is called a Shagbark Hickory because the bark is very, very shaggy. But if you look right up in here, you see the thick, oh, there it is. There's the bark right there. You see the shagginess of the bark? That's why it's called Shagbark Hickory. Now we saw hickory earlier. The nuts were a little smaller. It's a different type. There's a Pignut Hickory, and this one is Shagbark. But if you look, say, right up here in the tree, you see the bigger nuts. I think we have some on the ground. Oh yeah, here we go. The Shagbark Hickory tends to be the ones which has the larger nuts, and it's 4 different sections. Sometimes the nut is small, but this one has a very thick husk. The nuts are very delicious. Getting to them is the problem. And once you get to them, though, as I said about the other one, they're almost like a sweet pecan. So this is the Shagbark Hickory, this huge, huge tree here. which has literally thousands of nuts on it. So this must be a very, very old tree. And then right over here next to that tree, I'll let my husband talk about this one.
This is a hagberry. This hagberry tree has fruit. As you can see, lots of little fruit. You can zoom right in. Has orange and red. All this is edible. All the fruit is edible. And it tastes great. If it's your first time, don't expect it to be a full fruit. The seed is about as large as the fruit is on the inside. But you can take it and peel off the skin and suck the internal parts. It's good stuff. And then if you want to, you can chew the seed. Can't hurt you. All this is hagberry. It may take a load, a whole basket full to feed you, but it's worth it. I'll collect a few. It'll be ripe for you all winter long. Fall and winter. So you got something to eat on. Oops.
Here we are in the shade, still a bit on the edges of the woods. We come upon this irritating plant which most people hate. This is called greenbrier. And if you look at it closely, there's a reason. All these little sticky, very, very sticky briars all up and down the stem and even under the leaf. However, if you can get past that and wait until it starts growing, and especially in the early spring, and sometimes you'll see it this time of year, you want to get the leaves that are new, and then they grow at the tips of these the stem. That's the part you want to eat because it's doesn't have the briars on it yet, and it also is very tender. Some people say it tastes like asparagus, others like green beans or string beans, but the greenbrier has edible leaves if you get it in the springtime and use the very tips. Then you don't have to worry about all the briars, you know, and getting stuck and stung and everything. But this is greenbrier, and it is edible. Just do it in the springtime. Here we are. We've left the edges of the woods, and we're now back into like open field. But as you note, we're in the shade a little bit, and we found some violet. This is called the common violet. And again, we want to look at the leaves and notice the heart-shaped leaves. Common violets normally have like a purple flower to it, but there are other violets that are yellow. There's one that has white flowers. The most common, though, is this purple violeted one. You don't see the purple violets because they're out of season right now, so you're just going to see the leaves in the fall, late summer and early fall. And the leaves are still edible. The leaves are also high in vitamin C, and they also are used if you want to make like soup thick. You can use the leaves for that. Now, a lot of people take the leaves of violet and actually put it in their sandwiches in place of lettuce. So it has a very, very mild taste, and if you just chew on it a little bit, it actually tastes like lettuce. So this is the common violet with the heart-shaped leaves, and you see in the early spring you'll see purple flowers along with it, but in the later summer as well as fall they will continue to grow probably up until about October, November, when it starts getting really cold. But up until then, you can continue to use the leaves. They don't have a bitter taste at all. They're very, very mild tasting and high in vitamin C. This is the common violet. Back in the sunshine, and now we're along a fence line. We're back to showing you some of the passion fruit, but thankfully we found the actual fruit, and looks like we even found a flower, even though it's kind of closed up. You can kind of see it is closed up a little bit because in the sun they tend to close up. This is the passion fruit flower, And here we actually have the fruit. We'll try to pull this up here so we can see it. There it is. It's hanging right there. It looks about the size of an egg, but it's not ripe yet. You don't want to eat it at this stage. This is just beginning to form. When it's ripe, it's going to be an orange or more like a yellowish, crinkly color. We'll walk a little bit down the fence line now. Passion fruit will grow in open fields in the sun. It just likes to also trail along a fence line. But right here, my husband has gathered several of them. And it looks like we got some that are ripe. Oh, water. This is a good ripe one right here. This is pretty much how it needs to look when it's ripe. And for passion fruit, they don't really ripen until about October. You may find a few. Now we're going to open it. Just open it up. Ooh, yeah. And that's what it looks like on the inside. It has a wonderful, wonderful smell. Normally, and the seeds, and you see they're kind of encased in this gel-like substance. What part do you like to eat?
The gel.
The gel. This is actually what they make passion juice from. And you just can eat the whole thing and just swallow the seeds. Does it have that sweet taste? They're a little bit early. It's probably because it's been so dry. But normally these are good and ripe in October. So we see a lot of green ones down here. We see this one looks like it's more properly ripe.
Redder.
Yeah, so let's try this one. Oh yeah, that's better. Yeah, you see the seeds are still kind of a nice beige color. You want to taste that one? See if that's more ripe. Well, it's not quite ripe because it's really too early in the season. But at least you know what it looks like. When they're ripe, they're going to be crinkly like this and kind of a yellowish color. These green ones are just now forming, so we've got to wait another month or so before they are really good and ripe. But when they are ripe, you will actually smell them. They'll smell just like passion juice that you have in the store.
Try that one.
Let's see. Well, these are getting better. I smell the smell a little bit, but it's really too early for them. Those are a little better. Yeah, I can at least smell those. This is how it wants to be when it's good and ripe. You want it to be nice and gelled like that. You see how that looks? And the seeds in them. And yes. Oh, yeah, they're, Oh, yeah. These are actually good. So they're, They have that passion fruit taste. But normally you would wait until about October before they're good and ripe.
These will just say.
Now I'm not sure if they'll ripen off of the vine. I guess we'll find out. So that's our passion fruit, the actual fruit of it. We saw the leaves earlier. Now we see the fruit. And remember, wait until October when they're good, crinkly, and yellowish colored, more yellowish. And we have something also right along the fence line, and most of you have seen this. Many of you have it. I'm just kind of cleaning my hands off. This is called, a lot of people call it pokeweed, some call it pokeberry. Most people eat this before it gets to this stage, and what they eat are the leaves when it's usually about, the plant itself is no bigger than about 6 inches tall. Most people use it as a pot herb. A pot herb is a wild plant that you put in a pot and you cook it like you would greens. And usually because these plants are wild and like poke salad, you may have to cook it in several changes of water. Now most people believe that the berries are highly poisonous. In the research that I've done, the old folks would actually use these berries in pie. See these little berries, pretty little berries? And they actually don't taste bad at all. They kind of taste like a grape, one of those deep purple grapes. Now, I wouldn't take and eat this whole little bunch right here. I'd just eat one or two. This is my second one for the day. They used to make a wine out of this. They also used to make pokeberry pie. So that's why I decided, let me do a deeper research and see if you can actually eat it. You saw I just ate one, and it doesn't taste bad at all. And it actually tastes kind of like a deep, dark, regular grape. And that's the pokeberries. And the leaves, it's a little old to eat the leaves of the plant. You want to get it earlier in the spring, but this is full of berries, as you can see. All right, we've come upon a nice crab apple tree. A lot of people didn't realize you can eat these delicious little apples. Now, if you like bitter, sweet taste, that's what you're going to get with the crab apple. But as you see, this tree is full of them, and so is the ground. Let's see if we can find one that's good and crunchy and sweet. We got one right here. See, they don't get very big like regular apples, but they still have that apple taste with a little sourness to it. Let me see. And the inside is a nice red color, and without using food dye. This is the natural red color of these crab apples. Looks like they're all pretty much ripe, and many have already fallen to the ground. And if you look, you can find some good ones on the ground too. They would make a nice jelly or jam or even a syrup, and probably a good apple or crab apple pie with the right sweetener. This is our crab apple tree. Yes, crab apples are edible. Here we are, now we're in kind of a wet section, and we're at the plants called knotweed or lady's thumb. The reason they call it lady's thumb is because on the leaf, if you look very closely and carefully, kind of toward the middle, you'll see what looks like an imprint. Why they chose the thumb, I don't know, but they call it lady's thumb. And another name they call is pink lady's thumb. That's because of the pink flowers that most of the plants have. Some are kind of beige, but most of them have a pink color to them like this. Now the pink lady's thumb, you can eat the leaves, you can eat the flowers. Sometimes you'll find the same plant with whitish flowers, but all of them are edible and nutritional. The pink lady's thumb, another name for it is knotweed also, and heart's ease. Remember we said some of these wild plants will have different common names, but most people know it by knotweed or lady's thumb. And you see this one grows like where there's moisture, so there probably is a rain. When it rains, it comes down into this area. It's not too sunny, and that's one thing we want to keep in mind when you learn about edible plants, the wild ones, that some will grow in the sun, others will grow in shaded areas, and others will grow along the wood side, the edges of the wood. So you need to know where these plants go so that when it's time to harvest them, you'll know exactly where to go. Okay, we found some dock right here along the side of the house. Dock kind of can grow anywhere. You can find it in the sun, in the shade, on the, well, not too much on the edges of the wood, but this one is called curly dock. If you look at the edges of the leaves, they're curling, so that's why it's called curly dock. There's many different varieties of dock, but all of them are edible. We have burdock, curly dock, and many other kinds, broadleaf dock. But they all are good as a pot herb. And remember we said a pot herb is actually any kind of herb that you put in a pot and cook, like greens. And because they may be a little bitter, you just cook them in several changes of water until the bitterness is taken out of. But this here is called curly dock, and it's a delicious, actually, pot herb. I'm going to lean here.
It's the same thing.
Well,
maybe not.
That's not dogwood.
No, that's not.
That's definitely not dogwood.
Oh, it looks like spicebush for sure.
Yes. Wait a minute, I believe it is. Oh. Try the berry.
The leaves.
That too. I think we have found spicebush.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is.
All right.
It's spicebush. Sorry about that.
Get a bigger one. Get a bigger one.
Okay.
Yeah, this is it.
I know spicebush when I see spicebush.
Yes. We have been looking for these for like years. Because the birds love them. There you go.
This is spicebush.
There's a lot of them. Let's see. Yep, this is it. Yes. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. This is spicebush. And the reason it's called spice is because it smells just like spice. Similar to goldenrod, it has that same kind of smell, and it's the berries, even though the stems and the leaves are also edible, but the berries is what they will use. You see that nice black seed in there? Now I know some people will take the berries and put the whole berry with the seed in the freezer and grind it up to make spicy cookies or candy. Some will take time to take the berries or the seeds out and just use the skin, which is pretty much what's left. And we're going to look at the stems. This is another thing that's also edible about it. If you take the stems of it, you can also smell that nice spicy smell of it. You look at the leaves, you can see how they grow, so you can identify it before the berries come on. But all of these berries, the leaves, the stem, and the berries of the Spicebush tree are edible, nutritious, and delicious. And the berries can be eaten right off the thing, though they kind of have a strong taste to them. But they are not a hot spice. Yeah, it's not a hot spice. This is the Spicebush tree, and this is the time of year. Now the birds love them, so when you see it, you want to get it, because in another week or two, the birds will have eaten them all. They love them. Got some more? Great. All right. Okay, we're going to save these. All right, here we are in a pile of what looks to most people like weeds, full of food, good nutritious food. Of course, we already talked about the goldenrod, and you see this one is in full bloom, beautiful and golden against the sky. But we want to move this over a little bit and look at another plant. You can keep that down there. I just broke it. Okay, right here we have something called American burnweed. Now this is a very tall plant. It's just leaning over right now. But you can see, if you look at the leaves, how tall it can be. It's in flower right now, so it usually gets up to about 10, 12, sometimes 12 feet tall. The little flowers are actually going to seed. The part that you want to eat on here are the leaves. You see the leaves here? They actually, when I first tasted them, they had a nice spice, not hot spice, but more like tarragon. Yeah, they tasted like a tarragon, very, very sweet taste. And if you just take it right off, right off the plant there, it's mild enough to just go ahead and eat it. Oh yeah, The flavor as it goes in your mouth is like strong, not bitter strong, but like a strong minty flavor. So they can actually be eaten in a salad or something. But I made them initially, I stir-fried them and added them in some food, and they really have a nice taste. This plant here, the reason it's called American burnweed, because it is usually the first plant to grow when there's been like a forest fire or something. This is the first plant that grows. Another name for it is powwort. But the most common name is American burnweed. You see all these little seed pods here, so it will reseed itself. This is an excellent plant to have in your wildflower garden or wild edible plant garden. Then we'll move over here, right behind me. Oh, here we go. This one has been, looks like it's been stepped on, but I think we can get it to stand up. Yeah. This is called milkweed. The reason it's called milkweed, if you see, watch me break this little leaf off here, and immediately little milk comes out. Now that milkweed, you see it's about to drip. Look at there. And it's still in the stem. It's in the stem also. Nice little, looks like Elmer's glue. Now, we learned that you can actually use this as a glue. We took a piece of paper, stuck it inside between it, closed it up, and in about 20 minutes it kept it sticking just like Elmer's glue would. But this plant is edible. All parts of this are edible. You can use the leaves like you would stuffed cabbage. Now this plant is a little bit old, so if you're going to use this kind of plant, you definitely want to get one that has leaves that are, you know, a little bit younger and don't have so many dark black and brown spots on it. But this is just to give you an idea of what the plant looks like. It has many different parts. It usually has a pod on it. We don't see it right now. It's kind of in the older stage. But this will self-seed. It will grow. And every year it comes back and you'll have this place to be full of little milkweed plants. It has a flower, which I don't see any right now, but the flower has a delicious exotic drink that tastes like no other drink I've ever tasted in the wild. And you have to pick it at the right time of year. So this is milkweed here and American burnweed there. And you look to the right, your right, my left, you see all of the poke salad berries, as well as another more of the goldenrod. And most of what else is in here is just a lot of grass, which we mentioned earlier. All the grasses are edible, all parts of the grasses. And this is just, though now you know this is not just a pile of weeds. This is actually food growing in here, free food. Wow, as we stand here, kind of finishing up our wild edible plant walk, I'm looking at the flowers here. This is something called crown beard. It's more medicinal than edible, but as we look at all the trees and the land, we're reminded of how the Lord blessed us to be rangers for over 15 years on 500-something acres. And this looks very much like a section of it in that area, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
So we just wanted to share with everyone a little bit about how we started with the wild edible plants. I used to say that I had a hobby as a teenager, and when I was about 16 years old, I began to study on my own about wild edible plants. And I thought it was my personal little hobby, but as I look back now, I'm convinced that it was something that God put in my heart to do for such a time as this that we're coming upon. There's going to come a time we're going to need to know what foods we can eat out in the wild. And the wonderful thing is, God blessed it that it's free. Most of us have wild food, free wild food and medicine, but we mainly are talking about the edible properties today that are growing in your backyard. And many people consider them weeds. But actually, if you go to, what was it, Genesis 1:11, God made all the herbs of the earth, and it was made for food. Genesis 1:29 tells us that perfectly, that this was for man and for animals, and it has not changed. And when I first started studying on my own, I remember back in about 40 years ago, it was 300,000 plants that they said scientists had actually discovered. Now they're saying about 400,000. And I used to think about that, and I was like, but Lord, there's no way we could eat that much. But I forgot, God actually intended for us to live forever. So yeah, we would have been eating so many different varieties of food, and we would have never gotten tired of it. Most people can't even say they've eaten more than 25 or 50 different varieties.
It's true.
And so I realized that he made all these different types of food, and even within the same family, like bananas and oranges, there's like sometimes 10, 20 different types of bananas, types of oranges. So this tells me that we have a wonderful, great God who abundantly loves us, abundantly supplies us with plenty, actually more food and medicine than we need. And that just excites me when I think about it. So when we share about a lot of the edible plants, we're really just sharing a small amount, because right now, as I think we mentioned at the beginning, we're nearing the fall of the year. Every single season has wild plants to eat. Now, you're going to find, I would say, most of the wild plants come in the spring, the early spring, and to mid-spring and early summer. Of course, as you get to the end of summer, there's still plenty to eat. It's just different. When you get into the fall and the winter, you still will find edible plants, but they're going to be more nuts, more seeds, more berries, And you'll just have to dig a little deeper, work a little bit harder to find your food, but there's still edible and wild food out there for you to eat.
Some people may think that the only thing these herbs are good for is for food or medicine, but you can also use it as a shelter. I know we're not covering that right now, but it's just something to think about. Jesus told us to pray that your flight not be in the winter or on the Sabbath day. If it happens to fall on the Sabbath day, there's plenty of leaves, fallen leaves and bushes that you can make a nice dwelling with, or at least cover yourself and stay warm. God has provided us with so much. When He tells us that the birds of the air, they don't fear because they know God takes care of them, He takes care of us too. We just have to learn how to utilize what God has provided for us.
God says that our people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Unfortunately, that's true. We often hear of people starving. In fact, when I first started learning this as a teenager, and I'm thinking I was 15 or 16, one of the first things I remember was seeing a picture of an older man and woman on the edges of the woods, and the caption to the picture said, "In the city, people are starving, but this couple knows what to eat and they're not starving." They were just like on the edges of the woods like we are, right on the outside, bent over picking up stinging nettle. And stinging nettle pretty much grows wild everywhere, and it's one of the highest nutritional plants that you can find, and it's good for some of everything. They were finding it along the highway, and they just would go out, pick it. You can cook it. Even though it has stinging little thorns on it, once you cook it, then all the little thorns just dissipate. So God has given us, even though there's thorns and thistles, there's still ways that we can utilize the food nutritionally.
Oh, food.
Yeah, these are the flowers of crown beard. Most flowers of plants are edible, but don't take that as every last one of them are edible. But my husband knows that you can eat these. And this is the time of year that you'll find these. Now, there are a few rules that we want to keep in mind when you're studying wild edibles. And I'm going to let my husband share a few of those.
When you first come up on a wild edible, if you're not sure, you take a small little piece. I guess that's small enough. You chew it. If it's bitter, spit it out. If it's okay, go ahead and swallow it. Wait 8 hours before you try another piece of that same plant. So for the sake of time, let's figure 8 hours went by. It's still good. I digested it. Nothing happened. Now they tell you internationally you gotta wait 8 more hours. Chew some more and digest it. You will not die. As long as you got something in there, you're all right. That's the international code. Now, sometimes you might find something that's bitter. A bitter herb is for healing. I'm not going to get into the medicinal. I'll just stay into the food area. And if you find something really good, you don't want to hog it all. You want to take a little bit in minute spurts of food and not get carried away, because we're not used to wild edible plants.
Yeah, you want to start off slow when you're eating these wild edibles. Just eat a little bit, even if it's not bitter. Just start off slow and gradually build it up, because they are so full of nutrients. Our system isn't really ready for that. So we have to take it slow, and over the weeks, take a little bit more, just build up slowly. There's another rule we want to keep in mind when learning about wild edibles. There are, of the 400,000 plants, only about 1 to 2% are poisonous. And you want to learn, if you have a plant, make sure there's nothing that that looks like it that is also poisonous. For instance, what's the one that's poisonous here that looks like Queen Anne's lace?
Poison hemlock. Poison hemlock looks like Queen Anne's lace, it has a lacy looking flower. Problem is, the poison hemlock, it has purple blotches all up and down the stem. When you break it, it stinks. The poison hemlock, the stem of that plant is hollow. When you look at the Queen Anne's lace, its stem is solid, and you want a solid stem. The flowers are different. You'll find one little purple in the middle of the Queen Anne's lace.
In most of them.
And most of them. But you can eat every bit of the flower.
Yeah, and the Queen Anne's lace, if you pull up the root, it actually tastes and smell like a carrot. Whereas if you pull up the root of the poison hemlock, any part of the poison hemlock will have a very strong, unpleasant smell. So those are some of the ways you can tell poison hemlock from the wild carrot. They tend to grow around the same time of the year, so that's why you really need to be cautious. But after you learn what the poison hemlock looks like and what the wild carrot looks like, you'll begin to tell the difference right away. The poison hemlock tends to grow about a foot or so taller than the wild carrot. The wild carrot tends to have one flower per stem, whereas the poison hemlock will have several little flowers per stem. So that's one of the rules of learning about wild edible plants. Make sure there's not a poisonous look-alike. That's rule number 2. What's another one?
Well, we should say, you don't touch anything you don't understand or don't know. If you're it's good to have somebody with you, and before you start taking and digesting and eating. Another good point is start in your own backyard. Learn what you have in your yard before you go elsewhere. Mm-hmm. This gives you a better idea and you feel more comfortable. Or you have the person who's experienced share with you the various plants that's good for you, and just take one at a time, learn that one and move on to the next. Touch it, feel it, and try and understand it. But it's real, we want to point out, you got to be very, very careful. You just don't want to run in and just grab because you're hungry or grab because you think you know. You got to know. Got to
be 100% certain that this plant is what you think it is. Learning to identify plants is an exciting activity. To me it is. And I'm going to tell you, children love it. And not only do they love it, they don't forget. I mean, the little, even as young as 2, 3 years old, they remember these plants. And the only thing is, you need to make sure you let them know, don't just go out there and start eating whatever is green. Even though some plants are poisonous, poisonous not meaning so much that it's going to kill them, but it may give them a very bad stomach ache, vomiting, or something like that. So you want to make sure, as my husband said, that you have someone with you, or you yourself are certain. You want to, if you start in your backyard, which is an excellent place to start, just make sure you can identify 100% certainty all of these plants that are in your backyard. And when you go outside of your backyard, pretty much you'll find some of the same plants. You know, they may be a little bigger or somewhat different, but find out what's in your backyard, then venture out into parks and eventually into the woods. This would be a wonderful Saturday afternoon activity, or
you and the family.
Yeah, weekend activity just for you and the family, or even taking the church out, you know, finding someone who understands this and knows it, taking the church out and learning, because one day just learning what to eat may save your life. Remember the Waldenses?
The Waldenses survived off of wild red clover. Mm-hmm. It was a good thing, because if they were being chased or the authorities were trying to come after them, wherever they were hid up or hidden, and the authorities would try and pinpoint where their food source was, if they seen rows and rows of corn, that would have been a big giveaway. But they seen plenty and plenty of clover, they thought nothing of it.
Yeah,
Who collects clover?
Right, and this is when they were, you know, there were times they had peace, but there were times they had to be on the run, and they had to know what was out there to eat, because most of the time they did not have time to plant and harvest. They had to eat what was out there, just like the text that you mentioned earlier today. Another thing that we're learning is about the trees. Now, when I started learning about wild edibles, I mainly was looking at plants that, you know, grow along the ground, maybe bushes, but I didn't focus too much on the trees. Just for the last couple of years, actually, we've been focusing on trees, and I was so pleasantly surprised to find in the Bible, I think it's in Deuteronomy 19, 20, chapter 19, verse 20, where it talks about what does the Lord say about trees and war?
Trees and war,
Wartime.
he told the children of Israel not to cut down and make weapons out of fruit trees because it was food. You're going to need it. He said if you're going to do anything, the trees that are not bearing fruit, that's what you use. But any fruit trees, that's food. Leave those alone.
And he said any trees that, even if there weren't fruit, maybe they're, well, nuts, but any kind of trees, he said, that had food that we could eat, don't cut it down. Now, you would think common sense would tell people that, but, you know, sometimes, especially in wartime, you're in a frenzy.
Situation.
Yeah, and you just want to get this thing built or do this thing, and you just chop every tree you see. But God specifically told the children of Israelite, make sure the tree that you are cutting is not a tree that you can use for food. I thought that was another example of God caring for us in the minute details that, you know, we don't think about. And he also mentions in the Bible, and I think it's in that same chapter, Deuteronomy chapter 19, where he says that the tree is the strength of a man. So, you know, now we've started really looking into trees. We showed you a few trees today, but there's many trees, a lot of the trees that we are discovering which are used as landscaping trees are edible and medicinal. And many of you see them this time of year, like the crepe myrtle. Crepe myrtle is a tree that is used mainly as a landscaping tree, I know in the south here, but it has edible and medicinal properties. Another one is ginkgo. Many people have heard of ginkgo. This year, no, was it last year or year before, when we were teaching as rangers for 15 years, we didn't have one ginkgo tree on the land. But we found some place that had ginkgos, and then we found the seeds and the fruit. Most people, all they know about the fruit that falls from the ginkgo tree is
smells bad.
That it smells bad. And I have to agree, it does kind of have a bad smell. But then we went and found out how to actually get the, it's not the nut, but it's inside the nut, is a beautiful emerald fruit, which has, what did it taste like to you?
I want to say like a nut.
Kind of like a nut. It's beautiful looking. It's emerald color, and it's not so, it's like a bean, a cooked bean, and it just has a delicious taste. Now the Asians I know use it in their with rice, and so we made some for the first time last year, and it's fun just cooking it because it actually pops out of the little shell like popcorn. And once it pops out, then you're able to take the little green emerald looking fruit and you can add a little seasoning to it or something. So I'm telling you,
I'd say it's more of a nut than a fruit.
What's like a nut to you?
Because it's a little harder. I mean, you know, chewing wise, it's substance wise.
Yeah, but it's delicious and nutritious, along with the leaves of the ginkgo tree. So we're learning, we're adding trees now as a new thing. There's so many wild plants to eat and so much of a variety that God has given us. We could be doing this until he returns, and then we just continue on up in heaven. So there's a few more rules that we want to share with you. Now, we didn't see too many of those today. There are plants that grow only in water. Some of you have probably heard of the cattail. It looks like a brown sausage. We didn't see any, but we didn't get to the water today. But if you are going to utilize plants that grow in water, you want to make sure. Yeah.
Watercress is another. There's a plantain. It grows in the water.
A water plantain, yeah.
There's
water lettuce. I just discovered.
Water lettuce. What about the lily?
Water lily. Yeah. There's pickerel weed. All of these plants are water plants.
There's one more. I know we didn't see it here, but it's the has a Spanish name to it.
It grows in the water?
Yeah.
I'm not remembering it there.
Jewelweed grows near water.
Yes, yes.
There's one, wapaka.
Duck potato or wapato. This one grows kind of in like muddy water, and it has a little potato type edible root to it, and that's why they call it duck potato. We discovered a lot of that last year, or was it year before?
Yeah, because I had to go in and get it.
The point we're trying to make is we don't have an area where we can get those, but if you do harvest edible plants, wild edibles that are in the water, you want to make sure that the water source is clean. Okay? You want to make sure that it's no runoff or anything like that. And even if you do utilize plants from the water, there's a way that you can actually sterilize it or clean it so that you make sure you're not going to cause any harm to yourself.
Right, because there's little creatures in the water, but God has made plants to help clean.
So yeah, you just need to keep in mind, be wise in all that you do as you learn about wild plants. Just don't go wildly out there grabbing food and just eating it indiscriminately. We hope today that, you've got a little taste of the plenty of all the food that's out here for us to eat. And remember, the key word is free. This is free food, grows free on your land, and it's nutritious. Everything that's out here, you have all the different tastes from sweet, bitter, sour, bland. All the tastes in a regular store you have outside in the wild. Just be cautious, be wise, intelligent in using it, and get started. Go in your backyard. It's not too late and not too early in the year to start learning even now what's out there.
Thanks for joining us. We really appreciated you guys coming along with us, and we get excited about going and finding more and more edibles, and there's just so much. And next time you probably see us looking for some more edibles, but that's what we do.
And even though I've been doing this 40 years now, and I thank the Lord that he gave my husband, we've been married 33 now, as soon as I told him about it, he just picked it up and loved it as well. So we're going to close in prayer, and we hope that you'll get started on your own, one by one.
Well, let's pray. Heavenly Father and lovely Lord, I want to thank you so much for this opportunity. And Lord, we ask and invite thy Holy Spirit to continue to enlighten your people, and that they will come to learn more and more about what you have provided for each and every one of us. Lord, be with our young ones as well as the older adults. Lord, be with this program. Be with all the participants especially, and bless all of our families as well as ourselves. Thank you, Lord. Grant us traveling mercies wherever we go. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
There is a place of quiet rest near to the heart of God, a place where sin cannot molest, near to the heart of God. O Jesus, blessed Redeemer, sent from the heart of God, hold us who wait before thee, near to the heart of God. There is a place of comfort sweet, near to the heart of God, a place where we our Savior meet, near to the heart of God. O Jesus, blessed Redeemer, sent from the heart of God, hold us who wait before There is a place of full release near to the heart of God, a place where all is joy and peace, near to the heart of God. Oh, Jesus, blessed Redeemer, sent from the heart of God, hold us who wait before Thee, near to the heart of God. Hold us who wait before Thee, near to the heart of God. There is a place of quiet rest near to the heart of God, a place where sin cannot molest, near to the heart of God. O Jesus, blessed Redeemer, sent from the heart of God, hold us who wait before Thee, near to the heart of God.